Well, welcome to Hamilton County TV. I got a special interview today with Dr. Dan Hile of Noblesville Schools. Welcome, Dr. Hile.
Thank you.
Let's get started right here. Let's talk a little bit about your professional background and your family. Let the people of Noblesville and the surrounding areas understand where you came from and professionally and family-wise.
Absolutely. Thank you. So professionally, I was a choir teacher before I moved into administration. I'm a 2002 graduate of the IU School of Music. That's actually how I found my way here to Indiana. Came here to IU and just never left. And so so I taught choir for 8 years up north in Cherubusco, Indiana. Show choir, musical theater, all those things. But then about halfway through that time, just started feeling called to serve students in a different way, and that's how I kind of found my way to administration. So I received my master's degree from Indiana University, Fort Wayne, and then took my first assistant principal job at Middlebury Community Schools at Northridge High School for 2 years. But then returned to Cherubusco as the assistant principal for junior senior high. Did that for 3 years, served as elementary principal for 1 year, and then served as superintendent there at fifth grade schools for 5 years. And then from there came right here to Noblesville. And I'm in this is month 3 here at Noblesville Schools as superintendent. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, and then so my wife and I, my wife Jana and I have 2 children. Our daughter Lillian is a freshman at IU, and our son Luke is a freshman right here at Noblesville Schools and on the football team.
That's right,
so,
that's right. I
yeah.
saw him the other night, so
yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, what led you to come to Noblesville Schools? I mean, what inspired you to apply for a large school like this?
Sure. So after serving for so long in my now previous community, I just started feeling the itch professionally to try something new, to go somewhere new. And so we kind of just started looking around and keeping an eye out for different opportunities, because as I'm sure you know, and I'm sure our viewers know, it's a big deal if it's the right fit for my skills and kind of what I was looking for also. And I always tell this story. I never forget the first time my wife and I came to visit Noblesville. Was before I had interviewed or anything. We just said, let's go see what Noblesville is all about. We had heard of Noblesville. Noblesville is a very well-known school corporation in the state of Indiana for many good reasons. And we went downtown and kind of just drove around, and we stopped on the square and walked around. And from the minute we walked around that square and just got that feel of community and the sense of the history here in this community, we just knew this feels like the right place. This feels like where we're supposed to go. And so but then, of course, I had to navigate lots of interviews to make that happen. So, so went through that process. But like I say, right from that moment, we just knew this just felt like our next home.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good. Kind of tell the people, because everybody, after this interview, they'll go, "What is Dr. Hile like?" and all that, on and off the camera. Tell us a little bit about your leadership styles. What it best describes your leadership style?
I would think that those who know me well and have worked with me for a while would say that I'm very collaborative. I love challenges, and I love to see what we can accomplish when different groups of people come together and work together to achieve a goal that we've all agreed is what we want to do. And part of the challenge of that, but in my mind part of the excitement of that, is getting people together who don't always agree, who may see things differently, who come from different backgrounds, different life experiences, and yet we find a way to come together and achieve what we've set our minds to. That's very motivating to me. That gets me excited and gets me ready to come to work every day. And so as people get to know me, I hope they find that I'm easy to talk to, that I always want to hear what people are thinking and what they want to share with me so that we can do those things.
Absolutely. Another question, and I, being a Noblesville person for a long time, and I have a lot of friends my age and everything who are kind of set in their ways and have questions. You're going from a small district that you were up in northern part of the state to this big district. Do you see similarities or yet big differences, and how do you cope with those?
That's a great question, and one that lots of people have asked, of course, and rightly so. And so Noblesville Schools is about 10 times larger than the district that I was at a few months ago. And what I will say is this: obviously there are big differences when you move from a smaller district to another. There's a lot more people. There's a lot more of community to get to know. Leadership structure is a little bit different, but at the end of the day, children are still children. and children need the same things, no matter if there's 100 students in that school or 1,500 students in that school. Children still have the same basic needs, and I think parents and family members, for the most part, also want very similar things for their children. And so, with that, obviously, I'm still learning and getting to know what makes Noblesville tick. I'm still figuring out how the cogs turn here in the district, as far as leadership structure, and yet it's also super exciting to me. And I really think that I bring a lot to the table to contribute to that leadership.
Absolutely. And one of the great things, even, I left for several years. I grew up in Noblesville and had been a Noblesville fan for a long time, and been involved in the school district. And then I left for about 15 to 20 years, and then I came back. There's a lot of differences in when I went to school at Noblesville High School, and I think Marty Cook had a lot to do with this, but the Miller Ambassador program that we have here, even though I felt like I'd been back about 2 or 3 years when Marty started that program, that I knew just about everything I need to know about Noblesville schools. But I quickly learned when I went through that program that the only thing the same as when I went to that school was it said Noblesville Schools on the outside, because it's totally different. So it opened my eyes to a new side of what's going on in the schools today. And for a person my age, and for some of the younger generation, or some of the parents, realizing that it's different. I know that they've had a couple of meetings, and you've probably been involved. What was your thoughts about that program?
So the Ambassador program is one of the really exciting things that I discovered very quickly. Actually, I started reading about it before I had even applied here at Noblesville Schools, and thought, what a great idea. And so yes, now that I'm here, my wife and I actually are both going through. I'm going through as one of the leaders of it, but at the same time, I'm just excited to get to be at all the meetings, so I will learn things as well. And my wife is a participant in the program. Same thing. She wants to learn as much as she can about the school system as well. And so, no, I'm very excited about this. I think what a great opportunity for members of the community to get to understand a little bit how school has changed.
Yes.
Because school does change every year. Things change, laws change, the needs of our students change. And with that also, I think it also helps build a better understanding within the community of all the things that happen that maybe people don't even know are happening, to help the school day happen every single day and to go off successfully. Because there's so many things that just happen quietly that people have no idea are important, that need to happen in order for us to take care of our children every day.
Yeah. Well, another question I have is, the national media and our media, local media around here, talk a lot about schools today, and the critical race theory, and trying to influence students and political and social values. Kind of explain how we stand here at Noblesville, or how you stand on this subject.
Yeah, that's a great question. I know that's on a lot of people's minds right now. So I always tell people this, because it truly is, I think, important for me to share. When I first heard about critical race theory, and it's probably been about 1.5 years now, when it first started making the news, I had to go look it up. I had never heard of it. I had no idea what it was. And I would say I think most of my peers around the state were in the same boat of, does anybody even know what this is? We've never heard of this. And so after doing some of my own research just to try to figure out, okay, what are we talking about here? I kind of learned that it was kind of a college level course and something that had been out there. And so I guess I will say, just in very plain terms, it is a college level course. It's a college level theory meant to try to explain, or at least look through a different lens at some things that possibly have happened historically here in the country. With that said, I place the emphasis on college level because it is a college level theory. It's not appropriate for K-12 education. And so here at Noblesville, we do not teach that. We will not teach that. It's not part of that. Now, with that said, obviously as part of our social studies standards, there are discussions in high school and some other levels about race and some of those things, slavery from years ago, which have always been part of our curriculum, right? And need to be. And so I think sometimes those lines get confused and blurred, that just because we need to talk about certain things, that does not mean it is in any way tied to critical race theory and that idea. Hopefully that
Thank
answers
you.
the
I
question.
appreciate that, because I
Yeah.
think that's a question that a lot of people, if there's anything on social media
Sure.
that pops up every once in a while, it's that question. And like you said, until a few years ago, we really didn't know anything about it, and now it's surfacing, so we should meet it head on, and I agree with that.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the strengths of Noblesville Schools, and then some of the improvements. I feel like Noblesville Schools is an outstanding school, but in every school you have to continue to improve. So let's talk a little bit about our strengths and some things you'd like to maybe expound on a little bit.
Sure. Well, again, I've been here. I've lost track of my weeks. I think this is my 9th week maybe now here in the district, and so I'm still learning of all the strengths. But some of the first things that I picked up on, again, just researching before I came, and then in these first couple months, going through my first meeting with ambassadors, first and foremost, Noblesville is an outstanding academically strong district. I know there's sometimes some discussion online and some other areas about test scores and some of those things, and I guess I will just say very clearly, Noblesville Schools is a top performing academic district here in the state of Indiana, consistently always in the top 10% statewide, depending on which scores we're looking at. In some cases, significantly higher than that, sometimes in the top 5%, depending on what we're looking at. For our STEM program, we're in the top 1% of school corporations. So many great things to hang the hats on. The fine arts and athletic programs are known statewide. Just so many great opportunities for students to find their place and to get involved and to feel like they belong, and that's a big deal. As someone who was a fine arts teacher, obviously I have a soft spot for everything that's tied there to the performing arts. But as the father of a child who is an athlete, I also have a soft spot for that too. And at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer in the power of extracurriculars and co-curriculars to help shape students. Help them learn how to do some of those soft skills, being a good team player. The challenges of adversity. The game's not always going to turn out as we want on the scoreboard, but that's okay, because you still came away and you learned something. You improved yourself. You gave it your all. Those are lessons that sometimes happen out of the classroom, right, and aren't always tied straight to academics. So. Again, I'm excited to continue learning. Right now, one thing I'll share with you that I think most people probably don't know, right now I'm actually going, I asked each principal to set up a time to give me an official tour of their building to highlight programs that I maybe haven't seen yet.
Okay.
And so I'm about halfway through the schools now, and I'm learning all sorts of things that I didn't even know that we had here at Noblesville Schools. So this is a very exciting time for me, because I'm getting to discover so many things and see our students in action and learn about all the programs that are available here.
I think one of the good things, and I know you were up there in the press box in our first game at Mount Vernon, and seeing that wonderful complex there, and what all you have there with the Noblesville Schools Community Center, right on that same campus, the 2 practice facilities, one for the band and the performing arts and one for the football, and then the stadium itself. I mean, it had to make you feel proud of the vision that Noblesville had, and the partnership that our performing arts people and our athletes are working together to bring in one.
Absolutely, and that's a big deal. In some communities there can sometimes be some tension or some, push and pull between different groups like that, and here I have not seen that at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I feel that everyone here is a Miller, and no matter which way students are leaning, I feel like everyone is supporting each other, and that is a big deal. I'm glad you highlighted that.
Yeah, absolutely, because I'm an athletic person, okay, as you well know, because I broadcast a lot. But I talked to Dr. Thornberry, Mr. Thornberry, several times, and one of the things I think it's amazing that I know that we're very, very good in band competition and everything. And to think that we have actually 4 turf fields that we could put on an outstanding band program, of bringing people all over the state of Indiana and surrounding areas to perform, because they have this way they can, on the big field they can go out, do their performance, but also the 2 next groups can be warming up in the background going through steps and stuff like that. So it's a great opportunity for us to have all kinds of huge major events, not only on the high school level, but in the youth level all over this county and city.
And it's a big deal that the Noblesville community continues to invest in your facilities and in these programs because, again, sometimes those things can go fall by the wayside, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm a big believer in the saying that, at any time, whether you're talking about your community or your school corporation or anything, either you're moving forward or you're moving backwards. People sometimes feel like we're sitting still, but you're never really sitting still.
No.
You're doing one or the other, and that's part of what got me very excited about this, coming to Noblesville, is you can tell just, some of the schools are obviously older than others, and yet every one of them is in great shape. They've been well maintained. You can tell that Noblesville has been proactive. Managing their use of property taxes and such to make those improvements, while still being mindful of taxpayers too. And it's, how exciting to have these new facilities here, and obviously there's things on the horizon to continue doing that as we continue giving our students the best opportunities we can. So. Absolutely.
Another subject's coming up, and is the election of school board members, which is coming up in this fall. And I don't recall, but my wife being in charge of the elections in this county, she reminded me, and it's just a few weeks away. So
it is.
I know that the school board is a very, very important part of our school system. What do you have to say to the people out there about coming out and voting and the right choices and everything, and talking a little bit about that?
Sure. So we have currently there's five candidates for 2 open seats, and so I guess I would say the same thing I say at every election cycle. These are truly the 5 members of your school board here in Noblesville truly are your representatives from the community. And it's always important that voters try to do the best they can to educate themselves on where each candidate stands on issues that are important to you. Maybe look at some of their experiences, both professionally and personally, to understand what they might bring to the table. And then at the end of the day, it is critical that everyone show up on voting day and actually cast your votes, so that the community is doing their best to put the right people in those seats. And so. My job as a superintendent, of course, is to work with whoever those 5 are. That's a community decision to make those choices, and I don't get to pick those. At its purest form, those 5 board members are my boss, right? And they do that. And the board and superintendent relation is so important because the board's role is to be the representative of the community, be the voice of the community, help make sure that the school is being led the way the community wants it to be. And then it's my job and every other employee here at Noblesville Schools to make that happen. And so again, this is an important election, like every school board election, and so I guess my advice is, I know there's going to be several candidate forums. The first one was last night. There's a few more, I think, on the horizon. Hopefully the candidates might share some of their points and their goals in the papers and things in the weeks ahead. And I just think it's really, really important that the community just read on those things, learn those things, and then make sure you show up to let your voice be heard.
Absolutely. Another question is, as a superintendent and as Dr. Hile, the family man, how are you planning on interacting with the community? And you touched on a little bit that you're always open and everything, and I've seen several times where at events that you're out mingling around the group, and especially the kids, and talking to them and relating to them. And of course it's a big advantage to have your son going to high school. Now, I'm sure that through his career, he's probably not always thought that was a real advantage, but
that's true.
But that's just part of being a family member of a superintendent or a principal or anything like that. But talk a little bit how you're going to interact with the community and keep the information flowing.
So one of the things I'm trying to get a good handle on is I'm trying to get a good layout of all the different activities that we have going on in Noblesville Schools, because as you know, every night there's probably multiple student events going on at one of the schools or all the schools, depending on the night. And so I'm trying to get out and at least attend a variety of different things. Obviously, I will be at a lot of football games because I have a child on the team.
Right.
And my son, of course, is my number one priority. I am dad, first and foremost. But at the same time, trying to get out and watch some of our other teams, some of their activities. And so as I'm meeting a lot of our coaches and directors and whatnot, I always try to remind them to send me their schedules so that, and maybe even highlight if there's a really important event that you think would be great for me to come, make sure you tell me so I can get it on my calendar, because I do want to attend as many things as possible. And when I'm out and about, I do hope that if members of the community, and that's students, parents, grandparents, anybody, when you see me, always feel free to say hello. I love that. I love to meet new people and get to know you, and so I know sometimes there can be that, well, that's the superintendent, I don't want to bother him. Please bother me. I love to meet everybody and get to know you.
I think one of the things, and I believe I'm correct on this, but I think you're setting up little forum meetings around the community to meet with parents, because like you said, there's a lot of times when you're in a big group, you're afraid to raise up your hand or ask a question. But if you're in a room with 3 or 4 people and you're sitting around a table and you have even a question about your own child, or a person that has a question about another child, that you're able to answer it. So kind of talk a little bit about some of those you're doing.
So Dr. Niedermeyer, when she was here, had for the last few years done something called Table Talk, which was, and I think that had some different iterations. It used to be run one way, then through COVID, obviously everything changed for a while, and then they kind of look different. So we're still trying to work out exactly how that will look, but I do want to start that up again. Because I think there's kind of pros and cons to different ways. Sometimes I know it was done as more of like an open forum. Sometimes it was more just one-on-one meetings, which gave folks a little more of an intimate experience and able to ask some questions you can't ask in a large group. So while we're working that out, I do anticipate here in the next few weeks, months, we'll get that announced again and get that back on the schedule. But in the meantime, at any time, if anyone ever just wants to talk to me or ask a question, my email address is easy to find on the website. That's probably the easiest way to catch me. But always happy to sit down and just have a one-on-one like we're doing right here also, anytime.
The next question is always a topic that when I come back to Noblesville about 12 years ago, after moving back, being gone for a while, and one of the new things that was coming up and that every school was doing it was referendums. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, it's you sort of get a mixed bag when you talk to people out there. Some of it are for it, and some of them are against it, but it's an important part of the school system.
It is. So here at Noblesville Schools, obviously you currently have a referendum in place. You've had one for quite a while. I would say most of your neighboring districts that I would say, I hate to use the word competitors because I don't like the competitors, but schools that we are similar to in our area also will have a referendum there. And as you said a minute ago, it has kind of become an important part of school funding now. Here in Indiana, it's been that way since about 2008-9 when some things changed in how the funding formulas work. And so with that, I will say one of the benefits that Noblesville has enjoyed for their referendum have been some of the improvements they've been able to make, whether that's in teacher salary and compensation, whether that's all the safety improvements that were able to be made over the last few years that have really benefited our students and made our schools much more secure. And so with that said, naturally, that is funding that really helps us to achieve more and to be competitive when recruiting and retaining our teachers and our staff, continuing some of those safety initiatives and looking to the future. And so obviously in a few years it'll be time for the community to have that conversation again. One of the challenges for the board and me and the leadership team here is to maximize those dollars and use them the best of our ability to drive the best outcomes we possibly can, while of course still being cognizant that these are tax dollars and we have a responsibility for those dollars and need to be responsible and be judicial. So with that said, if you're asking, do I support a referendum? I absolutely do. It is an important part of our funding, but at the same time, I want our community to always feel good about those dollars, because we are asking them to literally, raise their own taxes to help us achieve those goals. And so, as that gets closer, I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about that in the years ahead when that time comes. But again, it is a critical piece of the funding, and I think Noblesville Schools has done a great job of managing those funds well and using them for exactly what they were intended to do.
I appreciate you answering that question. One of the things you mentioned there, and you made comment about it, competitors, okay, but I don't think people realize, I know in this county, because of the superintendents I know here that I'm very close to, superintendents don't live in silos. I mean, you guys have conversations and regular meetings and sidebar meetings talking to other superintendents in this county and in this area, which I think's, I don't know whether that exists everywhere, but I know it has for years in this county.
Sure. Yeah, and that's true. And in my experience from up north, we were the same way, very close knit. We kind of try to stay with each other, because at the end of the day, I think most superintendents, we want what's best for all children, whether they are a Noblesville student or a Carmel student or a Westfield student. At the end of the day, we certainly don't want to see anything happen that benefits us that then harms students in another community, because that's not what we're all about. We're here for all students, no matter what. And so that's why I say I hate to use the word competitor. In sports, we can talk competitors, right? But when we're talking children and communities, I don't like to think in those terms, because I want what's best for all of Indiana's children and boys and girls that come to school every day. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, one last question: what does not Dr. Hile enjoy in Noblesville? What does Dan Hile enjoy about this community?
Well, specific to Dan Hile, I love to eat more than anything in the world, and so
you have some good choices.
Oh, I have found a lot of good choices, and the problem for Dan is once he finds something he likes, he just keeps going back. And I hate to remind myself, there's a lot of new restaurants to try. So we have loved discovering new places, and we have kind of a little short list for starting at home. Every time someone mentions a new place we haven't been, write that down. We got to try that next time. But we're trying to get to most of the restaurants on the square, but we've branched out everywhere. So we have loved that. My wife and I have started to explore some of the trails around, so we've been just kind of walking those in the evenings to kind of see some of that. You have such great amenities like that right here in this community that I sometimes wonder. It's fun being a new person to a community, because everything is new and exciting to me. And one of those things, what's neat about that is when you talk to people, I think sometimes people who lived here for 20, 30 years, maybe their whole lives, sometimes those things get taken for granted, right? Because it's always been here. Well, we've always had that. I don't think anything of it. What's so special? But as the new person, what a blessing that you have these things right here in your backyard, and you maybe don't even remember that. So we've just loved doing that and getting out and seeing those things. Obviously, all the school events, we've loved going to those and getting to know folks. And I'm starting to ask people, okay, what should I be looking forward to? I have been told by students, parents, everyone, that I should be getting excited for the homecoming parade.
Yes.
So that is in my mind I will not miss it, because I have heard from so many people that is a key thing that I need to be ready for. So.
Well, I can tell you, and I'll say this now and give us a plug here. This year we're going to also broadcast. We're going to set up on 16th Street. We did the 4th of July parade, my wife Kathy and I, and we did that parade. So talking to Jim, we had so much fun that we're going to do the homecoming parade. We're going to set up right there, the same place, and broadcast it. And once you get to know my wife, she's lived here her entire life, and a lot of people say I'm a great Noblesville fan, but there's no bigger fan than my wife. I mean, win, lose, or draw, she doesn't pass an opinion. She's always encouraging on that, and she knows a lot of people by being in politics her entire life here. So we're going to do that broadcast again, and it's a great fun for Jim and I and Kathy to do that. So it's more of a thrill for us than it is for the fans that are probably watching it. But I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, because I know you got a lot of things going on. If there's any time that you need Hamilton County TV to come and you want to set up and do a remote or anything, if we possibly can, we will be glad to do that, because for Noblesville and for this entire area here, Hamilton County have been very, very good to us, and we want to be very good to be good partners.
Excellent. Sure appreciate that.
So I appreciate that, and thank you very much for the interview. Thank you.